Please be my husband, the shy secretary begged a stranger, unaware he was a millionaire CEO boss. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Let's return to our main character. Emily Carter stands just inside a quiet neighborhood cafe on a gray New York morning, the kind where the windows fog lightly from the warmth inside, and the air smells like fresh coffee and cinnamon. She adjusts the strap of her worn leather bag, fingers tightening and loosening as if rehearsing courage. Emily has always been the kind of person who takes up as little space as possible. At 28, she works as a secretary in a downtown office, arrives early, leaves late, and speaks softly even when no one asks her to. Today, however, her heart is racing so hard she can feel it in her throat. Across the room, a man sits alone at a small table near the window, reading on his phone, dressed simply in a dark coat and pressed slacks, the kind of understated look that blends into the city. To Emily, he looks safe, ordinary, like someone who would listen. She takes a breath measured in seconds she cannot spare and walks toward him, each step heavier than the last. Her mind flashes through everything that led her here. The letter folded in her bag, the ticking deadline, the quiet panic she has carried for weeks. When she stops at his table, the man looks up, surprised but polite, his eyes a calm gray that makes her falter for half a heartbeat. She almost turns away. Almost. Instead, the words tumble out, rushed but honest, her voice barely above the hum of the cafe. She asks if she can sit. He nods. She sits. For a moment, there is only the clink of cups and the low murmur of other conversations. Emily stares at her hands, notices a faint ink smudge on her thumb from yesterday's notes, and thinks about how small her life feels right now. Then she looks up at the stranger and says the sentence she has practiced in her head but never aloud. The sentence that could change everything or ruin it completely. She explains just enough to make it sound reasonable and desperate all at once. She needs a husband. Not love. Not romance. Just a legal arrangement, a name beside hers, a promise on paper to satisfy forces far bigger than she is. She rushes to clarify that it would be temporary, discreet, respectful. She promises she would ask nothing more. The stranger listens without interrupting, his expression unreadable, as if he is weighing more than her words. Emily does not know his name is Daniel Wright. She does not know that he owns the glass tower where she works, or that his signature sits at the bottom of contracts she files every day. To her, he is just a man with kind eyes who happened to be in the right place at the wrong time. When she finally stops talking, silence settles between them, and Emily braces herself for rejection, humiliation, laughter. Instead, Daniel studies her with quiet curiosity, sensing that beneath her shy exterior is a resolve forged by necessity. He asks a single, calm question, one that surprises her, and in that moment, Emily realizes this stranger might be the only person willing to hear her out, unaware that the power she fears is sitting right across from her, and that this desperate plea is about to bind their lives together in ways neither of them can imagine. Emily Carter does not remember leaving the cafe, only the way the cold air outside hits her cheeks, as if to wake her from a dream she did not ask to have. She walks 3 blocks before her hands stop shaking, her mind replaying every word she said to the stranger and every second of silence that followed. By the time she reaches her subway stop, her phone buzzes with a reminder she does not need, a date circled in red on her calendar, 3 days from now. 3 days until everything she has worked to hold together quietly slips through her fingers. Emily's life has never been dramatic, but it has been carefully balanced, like a stack of papers she keeps from falling by never touching the top. She grew up learning that stability is something you earn by being useful and invisible. That lesson followed her into adulthood, into the glass building downtown where she works as a secretary, answering emails, organizing schedules, and making sure everyone else looks competent. What no one at the office knows is that her job is the only thing standing between her and a complete collapse. The letter folded inside her bag feels heavier than a brick, a formal notice written in calm language that leaves no room for negotiation. A family obligation tied to an old promise, a clause that demands a married status by a fixed date, or else the support she depends on disappears. It is not romantic, and it is not fair, but it is real, and it has followed her across state lines and years of trying to outrun it. Emily lives in a small apartment that barely fits her twin bed and a narrow desk by the window. At night, she eats simple meals and counts expenses down to the dollar, making sure her checking account never dips below zero. She measures her life in bus rides, office hours, and quiet hopes she never says out loud. Losing her job would mean losing her apartment, her health insurance, and the thin sense of dignity she has built by surviving on her own. She has no wealthy relatives to call and no safety net waiting underneath her if she falls. That is why she stood in front of a stranger today and asked for something she never imagined she would say. The next morning at the office, Emily keeps her head down, typing and filing as usual, but the air feels different. Every email notification sounds louder, every footstep behind her makes her flinch. When her supervisor passes by, she straightens instinctively, afraid that somehow the secret she carries is written across her face. She tells herself that nothing has changed, that the man from the cafe will say no, that she will figure something out as she always has. Still, her mind betrays her, drifting back to his calm voice, the way he did not laugh or dismiss her, the way he looked at her like she was not invisible at all. During her lunch break, she sits alone on a bench outside, watching taxis roll past and couples walk hand in hand without thinking twice about what marriage means to someone like her. To them, it is a choice. To Emily, it is a ticking clock. She does not want luxury or love or rescue. She wants time. She wants the chance to keep the small, quiet life she has built from nothing. As the afternoon stretches on, her phone remains silent, and with every passing hour, the weight of what she has risked presses deeper into her chest. Emily does not know yet whether the stranger will call or walk away, but she knows this much with painful clarity. Asking him was not impulsive. It was the last move of someone who has run out of safe options and is standing at the edge, hoping that just once, the ground might not disappear beneath her feet. Daniel Wright does not call that night, and Emily convinces herself that silence is her answer, until the next afternoon when her phone lights up with an unfamiliar number while she is refilling the printer at work. Her heart stutters as she steps into the hallway to answer, her voice steady only because she has practiced disappointment for years. Daniel's tone is calm, almost careful, and he asks if they can meet again, not at the cafe this time, but somewhere quieter. An hour later, Emily finds herself seated across from him in a small law office conference room she does not recognize, her hands folded tightly in her lap, as if to keep from trembling. Daniel does not waste time. He tells her that he has considered her request seriously, more seriously than he ever expected to consider something like this, and if they are going to do it, they are going to do it correctly. He slides a thin folder across the table, and Emily flinches when she sees her name typed neatly on the first page. He explains the terms slowly, clearly, as if he does this every day, which unsettles her more than the legal language. This would be a marriage in name only, a civil arrangement designed to satisfy external requirements, and nothing more. There will be no public affection, no personal obligations beyond what is strictly necessary. They will appear together when required, maintain a shared address on paper, and otherwise live separate lives. He emphasizes boundaries, privacy, and discretion, his voice firm but not unkind. Emily listens, nodding, absorbing every word as if it is oxygen. When he asks if she has questions, she hesitates before asking the only one that matters to her. Why would you do this for someone you barely know? Daniel pauses, his gaze drifting briefly to the window before returning to her. He says that sometimes a problem is simpler when you stop pretending it is impossible, and sometimes helping someone costs less than walking away. It is not a romantic answer, but it is honest enough. Emily signs where he tells her to sign, the pen heavier than it should be, her signature slightly uneven. When she finishes, Daniel places a modest ring on the table between them, not extravagant, not symbolic, just functional. Emily stares at it for a long moment before slipping it onto her finger, surprised by how normal it looks there. The paperwork is filed quickly, efficiently, as if this is just another transaction in a city built on them. By the end of the week, Emily stands in a small courthouse, repeating vows that feel strangely hollow and deeply serious at the same time. There are no guests, no celebration, just signatures and quiet acknowledgement. When it is over, Daniel offers a polite smile and calls her his wife, the word landing with unexpected weight. That night, Emily returns to her apartment and packs a single suitcase, leaving behind the life she knows in exchange for an arrangement she still does not fully understand. The new apartment Daniel provides is clean and minimal, closer to the office, safer than anywhere she has lived before. He explains that they will present themselves as a married couple publicly, but maintain separate bedrooms and routines. Emily agrees quickly, grateful and overwhelmed, determined not to cross any lines. As she lies awake in her new bed, staring at a ceiling that feels unfamiliar, Emily tells herself that this is not a fairy tale and not a dream. It is a contract, a solution, and a chance to breathe. She does not know that this agreement, built on rules and distance, is already testing Daniel's own assumptions about control and connection, or that pretending to be married will slowly make pretending impossible. Life inside the new apartment settles into a careful rhythm, one Emily follows with quiet determination, waking before sunrise, making coffee she measures by habit, and leaving notes for herself on the counter so she does not forget who she is supposed to be. To the outside world, she is Daniel Wright's wife now, a fact that still feels unreal when she sees it printed on official forms or hears it spoken aloud. The first time they step out together as a couple, it is for a small corporate dinner Daniel says is unavoidable. Emily spends an hour choosing a dress that looks professional without drawing attention, her hands smoothing the fabric again and again as if reassurance might come from repetition. Daniel waits by the door, composed as always, and when he looks at her, there is a brief pause, a flicker of assessment that makes her straighten her shoulders. He offers his arm, a gesture meant for appearances, but it steadies her more than she expects. The evening unfolds like a test she did not study for. Conversations move quickly, filled with names and references Emily does not recognize, but she listens carefully, speaks when spoken to, and answers with honesty instead of pretending to understand more than she does. When someone makes a careless remark about her background, she does not bristle or retreat. She smiles politely and responds with calm clarity, explaining her role, her work ethic, and the pride she takes in doing her job well. Daniel notices how the room shifts, how respect follows her words not because of who she is married to, but because of how she carries herself. Over the following weeks, these moments repeat. Emily learns how to move through unfamiliar spaces without shrinking, how to stand beside Daniel without feeling like an accessory. She makes small mistakes, mispronounces names, laughs at the wrong moments, but she never pretends to be someone else. At home, they keep to their agreement, separate rooms, separate lives, shared silence in the evenings. Sometimes Daniel comes home late, loosening his tie as he pours a glass of water, and finds Emily at the kitchen table reviewing notes from work or reading quietly. They exchange brief updates, nothing personal, nothing that crosses the invisible line between them. Yet the air between them begins to change. Daniel starts to notice the way Emily organizes the space without being asked, how she remembers details he forgets, how she asks thoughtful questions without prying. Emily notices the way Daniel listens when she speaks, the way he never dismisses her concerns, the way his presence feels steady rather than imposing. One afternoon, Daniel asks if she would join him for lunch at his office, framing it as a necessity for appearances. Emily agrees, unaware of the stir her arrival causes. As she walks through the lobby on his arm, employees glance up in surprise, some recognizing her as the quiet secretary who files reports 2 floors down. Emily feels heat rise to her cheeks but keeps her pace even, reminding herself that she belongs anywhere she chooses to stand. At the lunch table, when a conversation turns sharp and competitive, Emily offers a simple observation that reframes the issue, focusing on people instead of profit. The table grows quiet, then thoughtful. Daniel watches her with something like admiration he does not name. That night, as Emily removes her ring and places it carefully on the counter before bed, she pauses, realizing that the role she agreed to play is no longer just an act. Without intending to, she is becoming visible, and Daniel, who built his life on control and distance, is beginning to understand that the woman he married on paper is quietly changing the shape of his world. The invitation arrives on heavy cream paper with Daniel's name embossed at the top, a formal charity gala scheduled for a Friday evening at a downtown hotel, and Emily feels the familiar pinch of nerves even before Daniel explains that attendance is not optional. He says it evenly, as if listing weather, but Emily hears the subtext immediately, a room full of decision-makers, cameras, expectations, and assumptions. In the days leading up to the event, she prepares the only way she knows how, by learning names, reviewing the mission of the foundation, and choosing a dress that feels like herself rather than a costume. On the night of the gala, the ballroom glows with soft light and polished surfaces, and Emily senses eyes following them as they enter together, her hand resting lightly on Daniel's arm as agreed. The introductions come quickly, donors and executives, and board members who smile with practiced warmth, some curious, some dismissive, a few openly skeptical. When someone asks Emily what she does, she answers simply, without apology, and when another person jokes about marrying well, she does not bristle or retreat. She meets the comment with calm, explaining that partnerships work best when both people bring value, even if that value is not measured on a balance sheet. A small circle forms, listening now, not laughing, and Daniel notices the shift, the way Emily grounds the conversation without dominating it. Later, a minor crisis ripples through the room when a scheduled speaker is delayed and the program threatens to stall. Voices lower, glances dart, and tension builds as minutes slip by. Emily watches quietly, then steps forward with a suggestion that feels obvious to her, but surprising to everyone else. She proposes highlighting a brief story from the foundation's work, focusing on impact rather than agenda, something human that fills the gap and reorients the room. The coordinator hesitates, then nods, and within moments Emily is guiding a short segment with warmth and clarity, inviting attention without demanding it. The room settles, applause follows, and the evening resumes with renewed energy. Daniel watches from a step back, surprised by the steadiness in his chest, by the realization that he trusts her instincts completely. As the night winds down, a board member pulls Daniel aside and remarks on Emily's presence, not as an accessory, but as an asset. The comment lands heavier than any praise Daniel has received in years. On the ride home, the city lights sliding past the windows, silence fills the car, not awkward, not forced. Daniel thanks Emily, sincerely, for handling the situation with grace, and she shrugs lightly, saying she only did what seemed right. At home, she removes her shoes and sets them neatly by the door, the ring cool against her finger, and for the first time since the contract was signed, Daniel pauses before retreating to his room. He asks how she felt tonight, not as a requirement, but as a genuine question. Emily answers honestly, admitting she was nervous and proud and tired all at once. Daniel nods, understanding more than he says. As the night settles around them, both recognize that the test they just passed was not written into any agreement, and that something important shifted in that ballroom, something neither money nor rules can easily contain. The days after the gala settle into a quieter rhythm, but something between Emily and Daniel has undeniably shifted, like a door left slightly open that neither of them rushes to close. One evening, after a long stretch of rain turns the city streets glossy and still, Daniel suggests they eat dinner together instead of retreating to separate rooms, framing it casually, as if it is merely practical. Emily hesitates only a moment before agreeing, bringing her plate to the small dining table they usually pass without using. The conversation begins safely, discussing schedules and obligations, but as the minutes stretch on, the silence between topics grows less rigid. Daniel asks Emily where she learned to stay so composed under pressure, and she answers honestly, explaining that when you grow up knowing you cannot afford mistakes, you learn to listen carefully and speak only when it matters. Her voice is steady, but there is a vulnerability underneath it that Daniel notices immediately. He finds himself sharing something he rarely admits, that he built his life around control because unpredictability once cost him people he cared about, and wealth became a shield he never learned to lower. Emily listens without interrupting, without judgment, her eyes attentive in a way that feels unfamiliar and grounding. Later that night, as they stand in the kitchen rinsing dishes side by side, Daniel mentions that tomorrow is his birthday, the words said quietly, without expectation. Emily freezes for half a second, surprised that he would share something so personal, then nods, filing the information away without comment. The next evening, Daniel returns home to find the lights dimmed and the table set simply, not elaborate, just thoughtful. Emily has cooked a modest meal and placed a small cake at the center, candles flickering softly. She explains that she did not know what he liked, so she chose something neutral, something meant to be shared. Daniel stands there longer than he intends to, the gesture landing with unexpected force. No one has done this for him in years without an agenda. They eat slowly, talking about nothing and everything. And when Emily sings a quiet, slightly off-key birthday song, Daniel laughs, a sound that surprises them both. As the night deepens, the conversation drifts into memories. Emily speaking about her parents, about learning independence early, about how asking for help always felt like failure. Daniel admits that he admires her courage, the way she stands firm without hardening. The words hang between them, heavy and sincere. When Emily retreats to her room later, she pauses at the doorway, turning back to thank him for trusting her. Daniel responds with a simple nod, but inside, something loosens. Alone, he realizes that the arrangement he believed he controlled has begun to rewrite his understanding of partnership. Emily lies awake, staring at the ceiling, her ring catching the light as she shifts, feeling a warmth she does not allow herself to name. They both know the boundaries still exist, written and unspoken, but for the first time, those lines feel less like protection and more like questions waiting to be answered. The illusion shatters on an ordinary Tuesday morning when Emily overhears a conversation she was never meant to hear. She is early to the office, as always, organizing files outside the executive conference room when voices drift through the partially closed door. A senior manager laughs softly, mentioning Daniel by name, calling him brilliant, untouchable, the youngest chief executive officer in the company's history, a man whose decisions move markets. Emily freezes, the words settling slowly, painfully, as pieces fall into place with cruel clarity. The calm stranger from the cafe, the man who drafted a contract with practiced ease, the husband she thought she understood, is not just successful. He is her boss. The realization tightens in her chest, making it hard to breathe. She backs away quietly, her hands numb, her thoughts spiraling. Every moment replays in her mind. The lunches, the gala, the gentle conversations, and now they feel tainted, reframed by power she did not consent to engage with. By the time Daniel arrives home that evening, Emily is waiting, the ring already removed and placed carefully on the table between them like evidence. She does not raise her voice. She does not accuse. She simply asks him why. Daniel stops short when he sees her expression, the distance in her eyes unmistakable. He explains, slowly at first, then with increasing urgency, that he never intended to deceive her, that he did not correct her assumption because he wanted to be seen without the weight of his title. Emily listens, but the explanation only deepens the hurt. To her, the omission feels deliberate, a choice that stripped her of agency. She tells him that consent built on incomplete truth is not consent at all, that she agreed to a contract believing they were equals in vulnerability, not that one of them held all the leverage. Daniel tries to reassure her, saying the contract was fair, that he never used his position to influence her work, that he respected every boundary they set. Emily shakes her head, tears finally breaking through her composure. Respect, she says, requires honesty from the beginning. She admits that she trusted him, that she allowed herself to feel safe, and now that safety feels like a carefully constructed illusion. The words cut deeper than anger ever could. Daniel reaches out instinctively, then stops, remembering the lines they drew, realizing too late how much damage has been done by crossing the most important one. Emily tells him she is leaving, that the arrangement is over, not because she cannot continue pretending, but because pretending now feels like betrayal of herself. She gathers her things methodically, each folded item reinforcing her resolve. Daniel stands helplessly, watching the woman who changed his life slip away, understanding for the first time that his silence was not neutrality, but control disguised as caution. As the door closes behind Emily, the apartment falls quiet, heavier than it has ever been. Daniel remains standing long after she leaves, staring at the ring on the table, finally grasping that everything he thought he was protecting has been undone by the truth he chose not to tell. The days after Emily leaves stretch longer than Daniel expects, each hour sharpening his understanding of what he lost by staying silent. He does not call immediately, resisting the instinct to explain himself into forgiveness, knowing that words without action would only deepen the wound. Instead, he does what he has always done when faced with a problem he cannot ignore. He dismantles it piece by piece. The first change happens quietly at work, where Daniel formally recuses himself from any oversight related to Emily's department, documenting the decision and placing it on record so that no shadow of influence remains. He meets with the board and discloses the personal conflict he failed to acknowledge, accepting their scrutiny without deflection. The next step is harder. He terminates the contract that bound their marriage, filing the paperwork with a finality that hurts but feels necessary. There will be no leverage, no obligations, no invisible strings left for Emily to fear. When he finally reaches out, it is not with an apology delivered in private, but with an invitation that leaves the choice entirely hers. Emily receives the message on a quiet Sunday afternoon while unpacking boxes in her old apartment, the familiar creak of the floor grounding her as she reads. Daniel asks her to attend a foundation event, not as his wife, not even as his guest, but as herself. He explains that he plans to make a public statement and wants her to hear it from him, face to face, with no expectations attached. Emily hesitates for a long time before agreeing, telling herself that closure is not the same as forgiveness. The event takes place in a modest community hall, intentionally different from the grand spaces Daniel usually occupies. When he steps onto the small stage, there are no lights trained on him, no rehearsed lines. He speaks plainly, acknowledging his position, his mistakes, and the harm caused by withholding truth, emphasizing that leadership without integrity is empty. He announces changes to the foundation's governance, crediting Emily's influence on his understanding of impact and accountability, but he does not name her, protecting her dignity. The room listens, attentive and quiet. Afterward, Daniel finds Emily standing near the exit, her posture guarded but steady. He approaches slowly, stopping at a respectful distance, and tells her that everything he has done was to remove power from the equation, not to win her back, but to give her the safety she deserved from the start. He places the ring on the table between them, the same place she left it days before, and says he is choosing honesty now, regardless of the outcome. Emily looks at him for a long moment, searching for any trace of the man who hid behind omission. What she finds instead is someone stripped of defenses, waiting without demand. She tells him she needs time, that trust cannot be rebuilt on speeches alone, but she acknowledges the effort, the sincerity, and the respect he finally shows. As she walks away into the evening air, Emily realizes that for the first time since this began, the decision truly belongs to her, and Daniel understands that love, if it returns, will do so freely or not at all. Weeks pass quietly, and Emily allows herself the space to feel everything she pushed aside before, the disappointment, the anger, and the unexpected ache of missing someone she never meant to need. She returns fully to her work, grounded by routine, finding confidence in the knowledge that her position now stands on her own merit, free of hidden influence. One evening, as she leaves the office just after sunset, her phone buzzes with a message from Daniel, short and unembellished, asking if she would meet him at the cafe where they first spoke, not to negotiate or explain, but simply to talk. Emily hesitates, then agrees, recognizing that avoidance has given her peace, but not resolution. The cafe looks the same as before, warm light reflecting off the windows, the hum of quiet conversations filling the air. Daniel stands when she arrives, his posture open, his expression careful but sincere. They sit across from each other, no contracts between them this time, no assumptions. Daniel speaks first, not with rehearsed apologies, but with clarity, telling her that he has learned what it means to lead without control and to choose transparency even when it costs him comfort. He tells her that he does not want her gratitude or forgiveness as payment for effort, only the chance to start again honestly, if she is willing. Emily listens, her heart steady, aware of how much she has grown through this experience. She tells him that she no longer needs saving, that she knows her worth now, and if she considers moving forward, it will be as an equal, not a favor. Daniel nods, accepting the boundary without hesitation. He reaches into his pocket and places a small box on the table, then stops himself, sliding it back and smiling softly, acknowledging that the gesture matters less than the question. Instead, he asks if she would consider building something real with him, without timelines or pressure, allowing trust to grow at its own pace. Emily studies him, noticing the absence of urgency, the respect in his restraint. She takes a breath and tells him that she is willing to try, not because of what he can offer, but because of who he has chosen to become. In the months that follow, their relationship unfolds slowly and deliberately, marked by shared dinners, honest conversations, and the quiet joy of choosing each other freely. When Daniel eventually asks her to marry him again, it is not in a courthouse or bound by necessity, but in the same cafe where everything began, surrounded by ordinary moments that now feel extraordinary. Emily says yes with certainty, knowing this time the promise is mutual. Their wedding is small and personal, attended by those who truly know them, a celebration not of status or rescue, but of partnership. As they stand together, hand in hand, Emily reflects on how a desperate request led her to discover her own strength, and Daniel understands that love built on integrity is the only kind that endures. Together, they step forward, no longer pretending, choosing a future defined by honesty, respect, and the quiet courage to love without conditions.